The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Authorities seized 78,000 kilos of smuggled refined sugar at the port of Subic. The shipment, estimated to be worth around 85 million pesos, had been misdeclared as mere slipper outsoles and rubber. The Agriculture Department says it would initiate prosecution against the consignee MFBY Consumer Goods Trading for misdeclaration and misclassification. The Philippines fell 10 spots in the Frontier Technology Index of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. The country now ranks 54th out of 166 countries, lower compared to its 44th ranked placement in the previous year. The Philippines, however, registered a higher score than some of its neighbors, such as Vietnam, Indonesia, and Cambodia. Meanwhile, the United States led all countries, followed by Sweden, Singapore, Switzerland, the Netherlands. The index ranks the countries' utilization of frontier technologies such as artificial intelligence and robotics. The Energy Department says it is not expecting incidents of forced outages or blackouts in the coming dry season. This despite the agency admitting that power supply may become slim during the onset of summer. Still, the DOE advised the public to conserve energy. While there are no expected outages, the agency warns that a yellow alert may be raised in some parts of the country throughout the year.
Ang maapektahang lugar po ay base po sa grid system natin. Kung saan po dito sa Luzon, mararamdaman po, magkakaroon po tayo ng mga yellow alerts, lalong-lalo na sa buwan po ng Mayo at Hunyo. Sa buwan naman po ng October at saka ng December, may manaka-naka rin tayong pong mga nakikita na posibleng magkaroon ng kakulangan ng reserba pagdating po sa gabi sa Visayas.
When asked about a possible hike in power rates, the Energy Department did not give an estimate. The agency explains that rates would depend on the distributor's power source.
Ang pagtaas po ng presyo ng kuryente natin ay depende po ito sa tinatawag nating portfolio ng pinanggagalingan ng supply ng bawat distribution utility or electric cooperative. Hindi po tayo makakapagbigay ng eksakto o kahit estimate na magiging epekto nitong pagtaas ng ating konsumo kung sakali mang tumaas din ang presyo ng kuryente. Pero alam naman po natin sa normal na komersyo, kapag po mas malaki ang demand kaysa po sa supply, tumataas po talaga ang presyo ng kuryente natin.
S&P Global Ratings says the Asia-Pacific banking sector can manage shocks from the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. The credit rater said banks in the region are well placed to absorb potential contagion effects emanating from the collapse. It explained that direct exposures are negligible while secondary impacts are manageable. The credit rating agency added that it does not anticipate any rating actions directly related to the fallout. SVB is the biggest bank in the U.S. to fail since 2008, raising concerns over its possible impact on the banking sector. Shares of Credit Suisse rebounded after the Swiss Central Bank agreed to extend a $54 billion lifeline to the lender. Credit Suisse announced the deal before the Swiss stock market opened, sending shares up as much as 33% before settling at a 17% gain on Thursday afternoon. That was a massive turnaround from Wednesday's trading, when Credit Suisse tumbled by as much as 30% following the news that its biggest shareholder, the Saudi National Bank, would no longer inject more cash into Credit Suisse due to regulatory limitations. The Swiss National Bank has said it was prepared to support Credit Suisse because it meets the higher financial requirements imposed on so-called systematically important banks. The Swiss Central Bank also said there is no direct risk of contagion to Switzerland following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and New York-based Signature Bank. The European Central Bank went ahead with a planned half-point increase in interest rate, but was silent on what may follow amid a banking storm that has threatened the survival of Credit Suisse. ECB President Christine Lagarde says the rate hike was supported by a very large majority. Let's listen in.
I have to tell you that the Executive Board proposed that option which is described in the monetary policy statement, and that no other option was proposed. I can also tell you that the decision was adopted by a very large majority, with 3 or 4 that did not support the decision, not in its principle, because they were ready to go for that decision, but they were keen to probably give a bit more time to see how the situation unfolds and what additional data we can collect. But otherwise, it was a very large majority decision. And I would say taken in rather record time.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. We're still watching One News Now. I'm Jess De Los Santos. While some businessmen welcome charter change to encourage foreign investments, there are others who fear that lawmakers would use the opportunity to tinker with political provisions. Local business leaders aired their sentiment during the Senate's public consultation on Chacha in Cebu. They fear that opening up the Constitution may lead to amendments such as term extensions for officials in power.
We would like to be very cautious about it kasi we know for a fact that once this is opened already, we might lose control of all the other agenda in terms of term limits, the political dynasty provisions, no? So, yun lang po ang concern namin.
Senator Robin Padilla, chairperson of the Senate Committee on Constitutional Amendments, said the chamber will ensure that amendments would be limited to economic provisions only should Chacha push through.
Hindi po kami papayag na magkaroon ng magkalokohan dito. Tatayo po kami at magiging bukal po kaming magsasalita. Nalokohan na ito. Ganun. Ang gusto po natin talaga ay magdulot na ng ginhawa, pag-unlad, pagbabago.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue laments low tax compliance among online sellers. This as the BIR reports that only 7,000 of the 2 million sellers on online platforms have registered with the Bureau. Some sellers explain they have not registered due to confusion over BIR's process and policies. The BIR says the amount collected from online sellers in 2022 could be doubled if more business owners had signed up. For this reason, the Bureau is coordinating with online platforms for its information drive on its processes and encourage more online sellers to register.
We want them to also comply because to level the playing field. Kung yung brick and mortar na sari-sari store na literally nakikita mo is required and is complying with the registration, sana ganun din ang online sellers. They don't have to worry about maliit lang kami because the tax code is embedded with mechanisms which gives relief sa mga maliliit.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue has filed criminal complaints against 4 suspected ghost corporations. The BIR identified them as Build Force Trading, Crazy Kitchen Food Trade, Decorich Super Trade, and Reddington. Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. said they sell fake receipts which will be used by buyers as deductions to their expenses. Lumagi said the fraudulent tax scheme has cost the government around 25.5 billion pesos in revenue losses. The complaints against the 4 companies stem from a raid in December 2022 where thousands of illegal documents were seized.
They put up corporations specifically to sell fake receipts. Yan ang binebenta nila at ang mga bumibili dito, ang mga negosyante na ginagamit itong resibo nito as corresponding deductions sa kanilang expenses at saka sa VAT. We will still continue filing cases against the sellers. Ito pa lang ang unang kasong final natin.
PLDT subsidiary Smart Communications and Digital Mobile have signed a deal for the sale and leaseback of 1,012 towers to the tune of 12.1 billion pesos. In a disclosure to the stock exchange, PLDT said the deal was signed with KKR-backed Frontier Tower Associates. The company said the transaction brought the total number of towers monetized via sale and leaseback to over 7,500 for a total of over 98 billion pesos. PLDT says the transaction supports the administration's Build Better More program, which incorporates a strong digital infrastructure program to ensure that Filipinos will have access to affordable and reliable internet. PLDT is set to acquire Sky Cable's broadband business for 6.75 billion pesos. In a disclosure to the stock exchange, PLDT said it wants to expand its network to address rising demand for connectivity. The transaction covers the sale of all of Sky Cable's 1.38 billion shares currently owned by the Lopez Group. ABS-CBN is expected to net 4 billion pesos from the deal, which it says will help it focus on content creation. The deal is still subject to regulatory clearances. Sky Cable has yet to disclose its plans for its flagship news channel, ANC. In other news, TikTok is again making global headlines amid growing security concerns raised by Western nations. The Wall Street Journal has earlier reported that the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investments is calling on TikTok's Chinese owners to sell their stakes in the social media app due to national security issues. The committee supposedly threatened a ban on the app unless Beijing-based ByteDance divests. However, TikTok dismissed the reports, saying the investment is not the solution to supposed national security concerns. TikTok also pointed out that change in ownership will not impose new restrictions on data flows and access. Also, in response to the issue, China accuses the U.S. of spreading disinformation and suppressing TikTok. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin points out that the U.S. has yet to present evidence that TikTok is a threat to their national security. Beijing believes that Washington is using the excuse of data privacy to abuse its power to suppress foreign companies. Over in the UK, TikTok has been banned from government mobile phones on security grounds following similar moves by the US and the European Union. Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Dowden told Parliament that the ban applies with immediate effect to work phones and other devices used by government ministers and civil servants. He described the ban as a precautionary move and said it does not apply to personal phones and devices. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.